Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reunion 2021. I am your host, Michelle Presnell, and I work in the Office of Institutional Advancement. I'm the Associate Director of Development. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions. And here with us today is the very accomplished, very wonderful Suzanne Del Guizo. And I'm going to give her a quick introduction. First, I wanted to ask everyone, we'll tell everyone first that we're going to record this session. So you are being recorded so that we can show this in the future. And if everyone just be mindful of their the noise, if you want to put yourself on mute, that would be great, just so we'll hear Suzanne's presentation and then we'll take questions afterwards. Does that sound good to everybody? All right, great. So with us today is Suzanne Del Guizo. She is a professor of English at Chestnut Hill College and the editor of the Hemingway Review. She has been teaching at Chestnut Hill College for 16 years and teaches a variety of courses in American literature, gender studies, film, and writing. She's published more than 20 articles in scholarly journals and has co-edited 3 books. Ernest Hemingway, in Context, from Cambridge University Press, 2013, with Deborah A. Modelmog. Ernest Hemingway's The Garden of Eden, 25 Years of Criticism, from Kent State University Press, 2012, with Frederick
Swoboda.
Thank you. And most recently, The New Hemingway Studies with Kirk Kernot for Cambridge University Press, which came out last summer. Please join me in welcoming Suzanne Del Guizo.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thanks, Michelle, for that introduction. And I'm just so pleased to be here. I was telling Michelle, I want to start with a second of an apology, because I was a minute or 2 late to the call because my son is going to prom tonight. And we're having about, I think, 6 teenagers sleeping over. So things are a little chaotic here. But anyway, I'm so glad to be here with you. And it's a pleasure to have a chance to tell you a little bit about what's going on at Chestnut Hill with the humanities and the arts in particular. So this is Humanities on the Brink of Greatness. Now, if you hear that, you might think that doesn't really gel with what I'm hearing in the world. And you can see Plato's got his head kind of at the mercy of market whims here. There's a lot going on in the humanities right now. A lot is changing. Mostly what you'll hear are the humanities are in crisis. A colleague of mine, though, recently found an article from 1926 where the humanities were also in crisis. So it's not new. The humanities tend to, have to really articulate what we do very clearly for other people. And that's not always easy to do. But in the current climate right now, we're seeing a kind of anti-intellectualism that is suspicious of the value of academic study. We are noticing that there are a lot of market pressures as the cost of college goes up that is putting pressure on what am I going to do with this degree? And as a result, can I just ask everyone to mute? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Okay. Thank you. That's good. Okay. So there are a lot of market pressures. And so what we're seeing in colleges, and this is national, is a trend toward pre-professionalization and looking at the development of majors where the job title is the name of the major, So this is a national phenomenon. So we have everywhere since 2011, there's been a 33% drop in history majors. The decline has been longer and even a little bit more dramatic in English. And foreign languages and philosophy have never really recovered since the recession of 2008, which is when these tides really started to turn. But everywhere, from Harvard to right here at Chestnut Hill College, we are struggling to figure out how to maintain the arts and humanities and to continue to make ourselves central and relevant to today's students. And this phenomenon, you'll see there's a 2013 study there called Mapping the Future of the Humanities that was put out by Harvard, where they were asking themselves precisely the types of questions that we're going to talk about today. So, and as many of you know, Chestnut Hill has closed its music and art majors. So we recognize that we have to think very creatively about where we are in this moment. So here's reading the tea leaves. I wish I knew exactly what was going to happen. I wish I could tell you, but one thing is clear, that we have to change what we're doing to not be irrelevant to the students that are coming to the college today. So the question is, though, not all change is good change, and not all change honors who we are as an institution. So we have to be very smart and deliberate about the kinds of changes that we want to institute at the college. We don't want to lose our character or our identity, because let's face it, humanities is central to the mission of Chestnut Hill College. This is not actually from the mission, I do know that, but it is one of our favorite and most time-honored sayings by Sister Maria Coscalog, that Chestnut Hill College will prepare you to learn how to earn a living because you must, but you are here to learn how to live. And I will say, as a professor in the humanities at the college, of course I'm concerned. I have to be concerned with the kinds of jobs that our students are going to go out and get. But when I have them in front of me, I see it as an opportunity to make them people worth knowing, people who are rich, textured, thoughtful, critical in a constructive way. And I want them to have something to say when they get to the table beyond just the job that they get. So the typical argument around humanities, right, is, oh, okay, we give people the soft skills, you know, the things that it's not a data-driven type of major. So the kinds of things that we give them are things like, oh, you know, emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills and communication skills and empathy. And you know what? That is all absolutely true. It just doesn't land very well with most people. Most people don't see it as measurable or really understand it. And the truth of the matter is, if you go into the business literature, everyone from Forbes to Business Week, Google to Starbucks will tell you that these are the skills that they find most lacking in their new recruits, these interpersonal skills, these communication skills. The ability to empathize and be culturally and critically aware. So this is important, but it's also really hard to put your finger on. When I talk about higher order things like skills like critical thinking, being creative, being aware, being adaptable, that's all true, but it's very hard to measure. So the other thing I wanted to add, though, about this before we leave, how else do we talk about the value of the humanities beyond these soft skills? I wanted to say that the average person now will have 12 jobs in their lifetime, which blows my mind because I've been at the same place for 16 years. So that I'm like, is that true? But all the research tells us that the average college graduate coming out now will have 12 jobs. And the other thing we say a lot is that we're training our students for jobs that don't exist yet. Now, what does that mean? The economy is moving so quickly and technology is moving so quickly that maybe the job exists, but the technology they're going to be using in the job may not. I mean, think about Zoom just in this past year. I mean, I wasn't exactly like really slick getting the PowerPoint up, but we all know how to Zoom now. And so that's a small example, but any computer language that they use, it's all under innovation constantly. So having these higher order skills becomes really important because they have to not just be appropriate for the first job, they have to learn how to learn so that they keep innovating, keep pace with their job, and can learn on the job. And here's, if, you know, I say, don't just take it from me. This is an interview with a man named John Kaplan, who has a company called Covantis Consulting. And he is not a higher ed consultant. He is a retrainer in corporate environments. And here's what he has to say about it.
It's easy to sometimes train someone for a new job, but it's hard to train them in a way so that they can learn as the job changes over time. It's much harder to sort of deliver the education that makes someone agile in the workplace. And there are,
and that's what we're trying to
easy
do
to
in the
sometimes
humanities.
train someone for a new
hold
job.
on, let me get off of
but
John.
It's hard to
Here we go. So why greatness then? What are we doing at Chestnut Hill College that really will allow us to deliver this kind of change? So we have the higher order thinking skills, but we also want to figure out a way at the college to give thought to innovation. How are we teaching? What kinds of classes are we teaching? And where are we delivering those classes? Do humanities classes have to move in a direction where there's some more team teaching, hands-on learning, right? So new ways of teaching, new ways of doing what we do. We want to do mindful experimentation and deliberative change. Again, I go back to this, not all change is good. So what are we going to do? We have absolute confidence in the value of the humanities because we are human. Sister Carol nowadays often references this theme about being human. It seems so important right now when other people treat others so instrumentally. And we've been away from each other for a year because of the pandemic. It's so nice to get a hug again now that we're starting to be vaccinated. So we believe when we all went into our homes for the pandemic, people started reading, writing poetry, listening to music, really rediscovering the value of the arts and the humanities. So we know, I was reading, I don't know if any of you know John Green. He's a young scholar, public intellectual. He writes really fun books. And he was talking about the cave paintings at Lascaux, the famous Lascaux cave paintings. And he says, looking back all that time ago at the art that they created, he said, it's as if art isn't optional for humans. It's just something fundamental about being a human being. And so we know that as the world changes and gets more mechanized, the human-centeredness still has value. And this is Joseph Aoun is the president of Northeastern University, and he wrote a book called Robot Proof, because what he was noticing was that higher education was becoming so technical, and fields like cybersecurity and computer science were developing, and that fields like in the humanities were suffering. And he said, this is the wrong emphasis. We need to realize that the things that the humanities teach are precisely what the computers can never do, right? So he says, whatever the field or profession, the most important work that human beings perform will be its creative work. And he also says that critical thinking will remain a cornerstone of human work in the digital age. And he gives all these wonderful examples, real life examples. There was a situation at GE where there was a stretch of train track. They do some kind of situational awareness software. And in certain kinds of storms, the trains would fall off the tracks, would get blown over. And so, what he talked about was that the computers could figure out in the end what conditions the train shouldn't, go on those tracks. But it took a human being to go in and say, oh, it's the storms. That's what's happening here. It's the storms causing this problem. Now let's program the computers so that the trains don't go on those tracks at that time. So this is the kind of work, intelligence that humans bring to the workplace. So at Chestnut Hill, look at that beautiful picture. I don't think that's the art studio, Michelle. They're doing art, but it looks like St. Joseph's Hall. It looks like East Parlor or the Redmond Room to me. So, what are we going to do to renew the arts and the humanities at Chestnut Hill? We have a great plan, and I'm going to talk to you about all of these things in detail. Sister Carol has just this past spring approved what I like to refer to as a humanities hub. I'm very excited about that, and I'm going to talk to you about that. We're hiring a staff person in the center. I'm chair of the Center for Integrated Humanities, and Sister Carol has also tentatively approved, pending funding, an arts and music coordinator staff position who will work with me, and I will talk about that position a little bit more. And we also are changing our programming a little bit. We're looking for synergistic relationships. We're tying the humanities to other majors that have, very high number of majors. And we're saying, look, we have something to offer you very particularly. And we're doing that through minors like environmental studies and health humanities, which I'll talk to you about. And I also want to emphasize that when a student majors in an area in the humanities, we have to offboard them out of the college very deliberately. We want them to know how to talk about what they studied in job interviews. So we have what I call a Humanities at Work Bridge course. So these are all initiatives that, since we moved into centers about 3 years ago, we have been working on. And in the center, in case, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the new model, but the center includes English, media and communication, history, foreign language and literature, and let me just think, religious studies and philosophy, and art and music. So that's everybody. So, Sister Rita, Michael is in the center, Barbara Longquist, that's the English faculty, Sister Mary Helen Kashuba and Sister Jean from foreign languages. So, I work with, I think, the best people at Chestnut Hill. They're just wonderful. It's a wonderful center, and so much energy and so much dedication to making sure we find a way to talk about the value of humanities to our students today. So the Humanities Hub, which Sister Carol just approved, and which, how everybody was talking about how hot it gets on campus? In July, I am going to be in the art studio every day cleaning it out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take huge tanks of water with me, I think. But so what is the Humanities Hub? We wanted a space on campus. We wanted an energy, and we wanted to mesh learning and social aspects of students' lives. So some of the best research about pedagogy right now says students learn so much better when they don't just think about learning inside a classroom. They're able to recognize the ways that they're learning outside the classroom as well. So what the Humanities Hub is, it takes the art studio, which we are cleaning out, adding some beautiful sofas and an area to sit and have a cup of coffee and just talk and exchange ideas or do a study group, and also keeping the other half of the space, because it's a huge space, dedicated to the arts and art classes. And then we have the gallery, which is the Dowling Gallery. It's the front part of the rotunda on the 5th floor. And we're recuperating that space. We're cleaning it up. And one of our ideas, and I'm so excited about this, is when I'm cleaning, I started to clean it out already. I was on campus and I started looking around, and I kept finding these incredible abandoned art projects from ages ago. Students had made beautiful paintings and left them there. And then I found works from Sister Leo and Sister Luke. I couldn't believe the things I was finding. Some of them need to be restored and cleaned. But then, of course, also, if any of you knew Sister Margie Keenan, she has so much beautiful work up there. And I called her, I said, Margie, what do you want me to do with these paintings? And she said, I don't want them, throw them away. And I said, I am not throwing away your paintings. And so then she and I struck a deal that we would hang them. All this found art, we're going to hang for our first gallery show, all these student projects and Sister Margie's works. And for Sister Margie's works, we're going to do a fundraiser and sell them. She said, wonderful, let's use, if anybody wants to buy them, let's have them as a fundraiser. So look for that in the fall. We're very excited about it. And so the gallery space is being recuperated. The art space is going to be renovated. And then I don't know if any of you remember this room, but there's a room 520 and it's round, and I call it the tree house. And so we were able to get agreement that humanities classes and honors classes will be held exclusively in the treehouse. And what we like about that deal is that that will get the students up to the 5th floor when they're taking our classes and using these spaces, introducing them to the work that we're trying to do up there. And in the art studio, there are 2 offices, and that one of those offices will be the place where the arts and music coordinator, does his or her work. I just want to tell you, I think, when the music program closed, I went immediately to talk to Sister Kathleen McCluskey, and I said, listen, this is just such sad news, because it's been a part of the institution for so long. But the one thing I'm sure of is that we cannot have a Chestnut Hill where I do not hear a piano in the hallways. We cannot have a Chestnut Hill where art and music are not a fundamental part of the experience. It may be the case that given market pressures, students don't want to major in art and music, but do you know what was so interesting to me? When we closed our art major a few years ago, guess what happened on campus? The students started an art club and reached out to me to see if they could use the studio. And I said, see, art isn't optional. Art is not optional for human beings. They wanted to fill the gap. And so now we are starting to think about the way our minors, we're redesigning an art minor and a music minor. So maybe they don't want to major in it, but they might want to minor in it. And we want to make sure that some of our favorite programs like the Steinway Artist Series, the Opera Night, Carol Night, of course, continue, and that we have a way to help them thrive. So this art and music coordinator position will help us oversee the way art and music are delivered academically in the core. And that person will also help us run all the big programs that we all know and love at the college. So I'm really excited about the future of arts and humanities. Again, it's going to look different. The market spoke to us, and we can only do so much. But we are not going to let arts and music disappear from the campus. And in a lot of ways, I honestly believe with this position, they may even become a bigger part of campus life and more integrated into the student experience than they have been as just purely academic programs. So the other thing I wanted to tell you about is an initiative of mine. My dad is a doctor. And he was trained at Holy Cross, a Jesuit institution, undergraduate, and then at Downstate Medical School in New York. But his entire career, he is a GP, a general practitioner, and he was known for just an incredible bedside manner. Everyone loved Dr. McHugh. His name is McHugh. Everyone loved Dr. McHugh. And he's still in the profession. Oh God, he would not be happy that I'm telling you this, but he's 84 and he is still working as a chief medical officer. He cannot stop. He just loves his work so much. But he laments, the loss of time with patients. Nowadays you have all these computer systems and the insurance companies, and you only can spend 15 minutes with a patient, or you're only going to be reimbursed for 15 minutes with a patient, this kind of thing. So, he talked to me a lot about the things that he saw were vanishing from the medical profession, knowing your patients, knowing who they were, talking to them. And what I started to realize was that there was a role, that he had a classical liberal arts education, and it made him a really powerful listener and observer and gave him the interpersonal skills. And I started to look around, and it turns out that a few years ago at Columbia University, a woman who was a doctor decided to get her PhD in English, and she started afterwards the program of narrative medicine at Columbia. And narrative medicine has taken off. There's now a narrative medicine school at Temple. And there are programs all across the country. Now, in the undergraduate experience, we deliver that in a forum called Health Humanities, which was the minor that I helped create with Ken Soprano, who's in the biology department. And he and I worked on it together. And what we did was we combined we selected a set of humanities classes that we thought would really enhance people who are interested in going into the medical professions, the dental professions, even fields like social work and criminal justice. We thought, what human skills would benefit this type of student? And we developed a health humanities minor. And that started just last year. And as part of that experience, you know, we send them on an internship with either to the Villa, and we're now working with Chestnut Hill Hospital. So we believe that it's a really nice articulation. The sciences, the natural sciences at the college have exploded. There are lots of majors in natural sciences. And so I walk in the door and I start talking to them about, but how are you going to interact with patients? What are your listening skills like? And so we recruit students from those majors into these classes. And in fact, I'm teaching a literature class in the fall about medicine and literature. So the other thing that we're doing in the center to sort of launch and initiate our health humanities experience, we're having a humanities and wellness week this fall from October 13th until October 20th. And it's a really exciting initiative. We're going to connect to the college's Wellness Collaborative Initiative, which I heard you heard a little bit about earlier today. So, you know, it's a reimagination of the Sugarloaf space around neurodiversity and a few other efforts. And we're putting wellness at the center of the college in a lot of ways. And we're really thrilled. We had this planning before we ever even really heard about the Wellness Collaborative. And I thought, isn't it interesting? We're all moving in kind of the same direction independently. And so it's going to include things like healing arts workshop. We're going to have open art studio in the newly designed art studio where people can come in and do hands-on projects and, you know, just sit and talk. And we're going to have poetry writing and poetry reading workshops in the treehouse all day. We're going to do an environmental history tour of the Wissahickon. And we're also actually going to do a tour of the campus. So many of our students don't get outside. They don't even know we have a graveyard on campus. So we are really interested in getting them out there, walking them around. But we're having faculty colloquia. Barbara Longquist is doing work on sabbatical right now on environmentalism and literature. She's going to do something on wellness. Billy Lauinger, who I don't know if any of you know, he is not new. He's been at the college 6 years, but that's new for a lot of us in the room. He's a philosopher and he does well-being in philosophy, and he's going to give a talk. But our hallmark events are two incredible outside speakers. And I just want to let you know, you are absolutely invited to campus to come to any of this, all of this. But especially these two speakers. So the first woman is Naomi Rosenberg. She is an assistant professor of clinical medicine, and she's involved in the narrative medicine program at Temple. She's published in the New York Times, and I'm sorry to say these words on such a beautiful day and such a happy occasion, but she wrote an incredibly moving piece. She's an emergency room doctor, and she wrote an incredibly moving piece called How to Tell a Mother Her Child is Dead, which I have a hard time even saying without getting upset. So imagine her position. So that's where the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, the sensitivity come in. And she's talking to us about what the language of science cannot capture, modern medicine, and the need for narrative. And then we're also inviting, she's accepted, Dr. Laura Kolb. She is a writer, a physician, and an assistant professor at New York Presbyterian. She wrote a book of poetry, which is coming out in October, called Little Pharma, which won the Agnes Lynch Starrett Poetry Prize. And she's published in the New Yorker and the New York Times. She was a frontline doc during COVID-19. She wrote about her experiences in New York during COVID-19. And when I wrote to her to invite her, and she went to really, you know, like I think she studied at Harvard and then Cambridge. I said to her, you know, I'm so excited to invite you because, you know, your work is exactly the combination of things that we're really looking to energize through humanities and wellness. And she said to me, this is exactly the kind of conversation I would have loved to have in my undergraduate. My medical pre-med training was so clinical, and there felt like there was no room for humanity. So she accepted immediately. She was so excited to come to the college and to support the program. So please consider Humanities and Wellness Week in your fall planning. If you're in the area and you can stop by, please do join us. The last thing I wanted to talk about is our Humanities at Work Bridge courses. So one of the things that we know about our students is that they're really stressed. You know, this is one of the reasons why wellness is important. Many times the cost of a college education right now is very expensive. And for a lot of our students, that can feel like a stretch and a big gamble. And that's one of the reasons why I think, you know, jobs that, or degrees that have a clear job title or connection to the workforce do so well. But one of the things that I don't want our students to do is undersell themselves. According to a New York Times article just last year, when you look at the most elite schools in the country, almost 3/4 of their students major in traditional liberal arts areas. But when you start to look at smaller schools, that changes. I don't want our students to undersell their value and not to see the value of the liberal arts for their education. So one of the ways, another way to do this is to say to them, yes, we get it. You know, it's weird to be an English major. What will you do next? You know, like go out to the world in English, you know, so, but you can be, of course, a lawyer or a doctor. In fact, one of the things that I learned through my work with narrative medicine is that as long as you have the science classes, medical schools love English undergrad majors, love them. As long as they've taken the requisite pre-med courses, they have a much higher acceptance rate than just like pure biology majors. So it was a really interesting set of realizations. But one of the things we want to do is for our students who study history, for our students who study literature, we want them to feel comfortable and confident about the things that they've learned and the ways that they go out into the world. So we built these Humanities at Work Bridge courses, which are a very purposeful moment in the curriculum. They're for academic credit. You can take up to 3 credits of this. They're each 1 credit, and they can take this up to 3 times, different versions of it. It gives them a chance to slow down, reflect on their learning. What have I learned? How have I changed in the past 4 years? That's a big part of what we're trying to introduce in general in the college and in our majors is metacognition. Why am I doing this? What am I learning as I go? What skills am I developing? And getting them to the place where they can articulate that for themselves. So these classes are designed to give them a chance to really deliberately think about what they're doing, what they've learned, what they want to do next. And then we give them practical skills. We help them build portfolios. We work with the Career Center to build resumes. We do websites with them. We help them create a set of tools that begin to allow them to imagine how they talk about themselves in a job interview. We do mock interviews. So getting them to the place where they can articulate for themselves how their degree is going to make them a powerful member of a workplace team. That is what this class is designated and designed to do. So last slide, and then so excited to have discussion and hear your questions. So in the future, these are all things that, you know, in the center, when we have our center meetings, which we have once a month, we are talking about things like authentic research projects in the humanities. We have a new senior seminar experience, and it's interdisciplinary, and our students come together to work together, and they create not just a paper. The research paper is still, of course, the standard, and they still write their research paper, but now we also have them either do a video essay or a TED Talk or a podcast where they distill that research and present it in, you know, sort of a manageable bite size, like 5 minutes. It's like what they used to call the elevator pitch. It's your elevator pitch. And we want them to be able to, when somebody sits down and say, well, what did you study? Or what was your capstone experience? We want them to be able to talk about it succinctly and maybe even have an artifact that they can show, like the video essay or the podcast. We're really working with experiential learning more and more, and this is partially that integration of tech skills into the humanities so that our students come out with some really tangible technology skills that will make them valuable in the workplace. I already talked about the new capstone experience. We're refreshing the curricula. We keep adding new and interesting classes. We just, this past year, I thought it was brilliant. My colleague, Killy McCarthy, taught a dystopian literature class during the pandemic. Everybody wanted to take that class. It was so exciting. So just trying to find topics that will intrigue the students, but still introduce them to great literature, still but in a way that feels relevant to them in literature. And in history, we're looking at introducing a history of medicine course for the health humanities and things like that. And that's, of course, going to be the history class that folks thinking about med school want to take. So we're really excited about those kinds of combinations. And then we're also thinking about what we call career clusters or themes. By this, what we mean is we're looking, I'm also a member of the core review committee. And so actually I'm chairing it with the dean. And one of the things we're really looking into is creating more, I don't know if any of you were members of the interdisciplinary honors program, but that's our hallmark honors program. And there's a lot of interdisciplinary team teaching that happens there. And in this core review, we're exploring ways to bring that to more of our students. And that's when we talk about themed courses, like could we create a class around a real world complex problem like global warming and have it be team taught by a political scientist who would talk about the cultural and social and national dimensions of that, and a scientist. And so that's the kind of thing, and we're doing that in the humanities as well. So I just, that is what we're up to, and I'm so happy to have more discussion about any of it now.
Well, thank you so much. I think that was so informative about where we've been and where we're going. I love the idea about a TED Talk and podcast and really making kids, students rather, see the relevance for today. So we would like to open it up to any questions. Any questions from this group?
I'd like to say that I think it sounds great. I wish I were going back to school now.
Well, please do come. I mean, and let us show you around the new spaces, and if you can, come to the Wellness Week. And the other thing, as we get them, we have a couple. I have to decide how we want to do it, but we're going to start to share out those video essays and those TED Talks so that people can see what the students are up to. I think it's a really great way of showing because I could give you a 25-page paper, but it's not quite as much fun as clicking on a link and watching a TED Talk from one of our students.
Well, I'm coming up, I hope, with the Golden Griffins. I think it's the 2nd or 3rd of October, that first Saturday. And I'm hoping that maybe you can integrate some of this information and tour of your new space into that day.
Absolutely. I would love
Thank you for that recommendation. We'll look into that. That would be wonderful.
So I was going to ask a question if nobody else does. Like you mentioned a sort of downturn in, can you hear me okay? I think my sound is funny.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I got you.
You mentioned a sort of downturn in 2008 for languages and more recently in humanities. Why do you think that is?
I think it's the main reason I do think is the financial pressure. I think everyone knows that the college, our demographics have shifted a bit, and some of our students are financially vulnerable. And I think that is true. So when you look at the numbers, and I have some numbers I can pull up, but just the general gist is that I think many of us know middle class salaries have been kind of stagnant. Now it's looking maybe a little bit better, but they haven't been going up. And the cost of education has been. And I think it has made, even in my household, and I consider us very fortunate people, when my husband was talking to our sons about college and, the one going to the prom tonight, he said he wanted to study history. And my husband said, do you not want to do engineering? There's just that concern for their future. And I guess also for your own future, because you don't want to be paying for them for the next 30 years either. So I think that's the main reason. But, you know, one of our strategies at Chestnut Hill, I didn't talk about this explicitly, is we're really looking into creating a double major. Sister Carol, you guys, you know, she always says Chestnut Hill has a special sauce. And I'm convinced that that special sauce is the SSJs and the humanities. I mean, I'm just convinced that that's what it is. And what we are trying to do is build relationships one-on-one with really big programs like business. And I'm talking to Rita Borzillo, who's the new chair in business. And I'm saying, let's create a double major in English and business. And we'll sell it to them that way. And that's their special sauce. I want other center chairs to start talking for the humanities, that the mark of a Chestnut Hill education, the special sauce, the thing that will distinguish you in the world, is this humanities dimension to your degree. And we're going to push the minors and hopefully some double majors that way. I want to do it on the ground. I don't want it to come from humanities. I want to talk to the different majors where I think this would work well and have them sell it for us. Because I know from meeting with Rita Borzillo, she sits there and she tells me, oh, the writing, I need them to be better writers. I need them to make arguments more clearly. And so I think, you know, when we get together, this is going to feel like a no-brainer to her to try to do this.
We had a question come in from Robin about the music program and when the music major ended at Chestnut Hill. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure, I can. It was just announced this past winter. And you know, I want to be really candid about this. It is as sad as I am about it, and believe me, I am. I toured the music corridor last 2 weeks ago with Sister Kathleen, you know, and it's in her soul, you know, and I knew Sister Barbara Glennon. She worked down the hall from me for years. So no, everybody's very sad, but what we realized was that we weren't getting enough majors. We had in an incoming class 2 or 3 majors. So I had a former faculty member, Ian Gerg. He said, I can't teach choral with only 2 or 3 students in the class. So it wasn't just about it. We weren't recruiting because, you know, we have Curtis here and we have Temple. I mean, we have schools with incredibly big, powerful music programs. So we weren't competitive recruiting. And then the other problem that we had, I think, was that it was not a good experience for our majors because there were too few of them. And so as sad as it was, it felt like the right decision to make for our majors. And so we're doing a teach out now to answer the question. It was announced in winter. We have 3 or 4 majors still in the program. We're doing a teach out over the next 2 years. And Sister Kathleen will work with a new arts and music coordinator. And we're going to try not to skip a beat. We're going to try to make sure the ensembles keep going the whole time. We're going to make sure that Carol Knight and Steinway artists, we're going to look into ways to keep those going the entire time. And then we're going to talk about how to get the community on campus, you know, coming to our events and getting our students to come to the events. And then we're, you know, hopefully going to build, we're thinking about new kinds of music minors that will appeal to today's students. So we had a very traditional fine music program, you know, it's centered around classical music. What we're looking at now is maybe what we're calling sonic arts. So it's music, but for the kids today. And it will combine classical music and classical training with digital forms of music and technology. So finding new ways to show the students the value by meeting them where they are and giving them something that they want, and then showing them how much richer that is when they know the tradition, the history, the high forms of that artistic expression.
Thank you. I think that's a real relief to me. If anybody ever attends the Steinway performances, they are just amazing, absolutely amazing. So it's such a relief to hear that, you know, music will absolutely live on. I think we have time for maybe one more question, maybe 2 we can squeeze in. Kathleen Anderson, you had a question?
Yeah, well, actually, I have an observation. I think another really important part of the secret sauce of Chestnut Hill College are these creative faculty members, both present and those, the stellar faculty that we've had in the past. I was a history major, and I can tell you that my career, long as it has been, is seen in hindsight, not looking towards the future as you all are. But in hindsight, a history major could see patterns and organization and flow charting and where the decision points came and how you communicated those decisions and the storytelling and all of that created such a wonderful, robust opportunity. Mm-hmm. So we've had stellar faculty. We have wonderfully creative faculty now. And Suzanne, and you met Steve Stunder this morning, and they are absolutely excellent. And it is a pleasure and a joy to work with you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Well said. Thank you. I think maybe one more question. If anyone else out there has.
I think there was something in the chat, Michelle.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. My apologies. How long has the art major been gone?
That finished about 2 years ago. But, you know, what's nice is we have opportunities. Again, we're talking, just like we're talking about sonic arts, we're talking about a visual arts minor that would, again, combine everything from like graphic novel drawing to computer design, and also, you know, oil painting. And just trying to find, again, you know, part of it is, I think students feel very far away from like a traditional oil painting. But, you know, one of the things that we say all the time is, and we're saying this in core review as well, is that, you know, our students, of all students, we need to get them into museums. We need to get their eyes on these things and let them see how it enriches them. You know, we all know when we walk into a museum, there's a kind of, it's almost like walking into a cathedral. It's a very sanctified kind of place. And we want our students, I think some of our students don't feel those are their spaces. And we refuse to let them leave the college still thinking that. They are there for them. They're there for them, just like they are for people who maybe have been growing up in them, like my daughter, who's been running around the Philadelphia Art Museum her whole life. But I want our students to feel that those are their spaces too. So yeah, you know, again, with the art, we still have art in the core. I'm on core review, I keep saying that. We're gonna keep art in the core. We're keeping music in the core. These are gonna still be experiences that our students have. And you know, that is, and then we're looking for ways to, they're not academic, right? But we're looking for ways to make sure art, music are integrated into their experience all the time at the college. And I can tell you, the other humanities classes are picking up the gauntlet. You know, we want to do trips to the art museum. You know, we can do that in a history class. We can do that in a literature class. Mm-hmm. If I'm teaching modernism, we can go look at modernist paintings. So, you know, we are recognizing as a center our obligation to these areas, and we're trying to build it into our teaching in new ways. Yes, intersectional teaching, exactly. Welcome from Savannah. I love Savannah.
I think your you know, your whole talk points back at what you said, that art and really the humanity, it's not optional. Right. We have to do it. Right? I love that. I'm going to use that.
I wish it were me. It was John Green. Okay. But yeah, art is not optional.
That's wonderful.
Oh, that's what I'm reading. That's Steph. That's exactly what I have on my desk.
I absolutely love John Green, and this came, like 2 weeks ago, and it's been so great getting to read it.
Did you go to his talk, the thing he did online? I went to an Eventbrite. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple times now. He's just so great.
So what Steph held up, if anybody wants a fun, easy, like joyful read.
Let me get rid of my background.
Can you share it? Yeah, it's called the Anthropocene Reviewed. Now, Anthropocene is a relatively new term. It refers to the period of history where modern human beings have occupied the planet, so about 250,000 years. And it looks at the human effect on the environment and everything from the Lascaux cave paintings to Diet Dr. Pepper. It is amusing and fun and playful. He is, and also if you like audiobooks, I recommend the audiobook. He is a delightful presenter, just a delightful man.
Also, podcast too.
Yeah, the podcast. I love the podcast.
There's a lot of different.
The shtick is that he gives it a 5-star rating. Like the Lascaux cave paintings get 4.5 stars.
That's great. I've got a book on my summer reading list. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
I think that is going to wrap it up unless we have any one last, we got like 2 minutes left before 2 o'clock. Does anyone have any last minute comments or questions?
I have a question. You've mentioned history and English with the humanities as still majors at the college. Are there other areas of the humanities that are still majors? Because I can very much appreciate the blending of the humanities with the other academic disciplines.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we have foreign languages. We have French and Spanish are majors at the college. So they still host those 2 majors. And we have, let me just think through, media and communication is its own major. It's actually the biggest major in the center right now. I think it has about 50 or 60 majors in that area. English, history, foreign language, that's French. Yeah, religious studies and philosophy is a minor. Music and art is now a minor. So, but everybody else still offers majors. And what we're doing within the center, Lorraine, is we're really trying to integrate our classes even more and cross-fertilize them so that students see that when you're studying literature, you're really studying also history and art. And we're really trying to create a strong blended identity in the center.
That sounds very good.
Great.
And hopefully successful.
I hope so. We're on the brink of greatness.
That's right, the brink of greatness. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Thank you. That seems like a great place to end it, talk. Thank you all for coming. This has been really wonderful. Thank you so much to the wonderful Suzanne Del Guizo. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you all for coming. There is a session starting right now at 2 o'clock on understanding step families with Dr. Scott Browning, if anyone would like to jump over there. And otherwise, have a happy rest of your day.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye now.
Bye.